Για παιδιά, σήμερα παίζουμε Roblox και μπορούμε να παίξουμε My Movie. Όμως απλά να ξέρετε μου αρέσει. Ωραία παιδιά, σήμερα τι να παίξω.
Basically the same as the world ending to some nuclear apocalypse, but then your friends all died already. At this point, the video becomes uncomfortable. Continues preparing a situation corpses of dead and nuclear apocalypse. Finds himself a lava pool that always
Παιδιά, θυμάστε όταν εγώ έπαιζα Brawl Stars. Τώρα ξέρετε γιατί δεν το παίζω, παιδιά. Γιατί δεν το παίζω επειδή να θυμηθώ τη λέξη. Επειδή μου αρέσει, επειδή να κάνω speedrun. Κάνω speedrun, παιδιά. Ωραία.
some reason, it was dark and rainy. Loading up the new Minecraft world always starts you off at daytime, so why doesn't it do the same with this player? I think the weather could be symbolic for the player's emotion. He shows him gloomy and rainy weather to showcase the very sad emotion.
Ouch!
This player is just a sad friend, but I had
Παιδιά, όλοι νομίζουν ότι οι mobiles δεν είναι καλοί όλοι players. Ενώ έχω φτάσει... Έλα τώρα, βρε. Όχι! Ouch.
Get introduced to another character named Find underscore good and our player gets them out of also the picture of the house that he likes to play. Find patches until Luna asks them where they got the house that he from.
Ο Χριστός, ο Χριστός, ο Χριστός. Δεν έχω πεθάνει μόνο μία με δύο φορές εγώ. Κάτσε, υπάρχει αυτό το πράγμα. Τι καλός πια. Φοβάμαι. Ναι, τα κατάφερα. Όχι. 2 λεπτά και είμαι στο stage 15. Ωραία. Ούψ, σου έφανα.
Μπράβο, Γιάννη, έτρεχε αυτό. Για όνομα του Θεού.
Ωραία. Είναι low gravity αυτό, μου αρέσει. Ωραία. Ούψ. Ακόμα το έκανα ο Χριστός. 3 λεπτά και έχω φτάσει στο 23. Όπα. Παιδιά, μερικές φορές πρέπει να πάω στο Roblox μενού για να βετσαλώ το παιδί. Δεν μπορώ να κουνήσω στην κάμερα. Στην κάμερα μου, δεν ξέρω γιατί αυτό γίνεται. Ωραία. Ouch! Όχι! όχι. Τώρα θα παίξω κάτι άλλο. Πρώτο κάνω rage quit, παιδιά. Άρα τι να παίξουμε. Τι να παίξουμε.
Μήπως μπορείς να κάτσεις έναν άνθρωπο κάτω από το γη. Σε παρακαλώ.
Episode 3 is named New House. It looks like our player is looking at the image we saw last video and comparing it to the one he built. He then types in chat, everyone can say that you see really nice. Wraps himself a bucket and a hoe, and he writes to us some more reviews of the content.
Να παίξουμε καλά.
Then Nula asks them how he's doing, to which he responds with, I miss being helpful. He continues ranting while Nula is placing a fence around his farm. But then Nula says, and a few seconds after, Nula also replies with, hey,
Να πω γεια.
Το βγαίνεις, αγόρι μου.
It doesn't seem to care because right after he complains to the the original screenshot of a plan but
Δεν με πάρει να το έφτιαξα. Τώρα το έφτιαξα και το βγαίνεις στην κοινία.
Εκείνη έφυγε νομίζω.
Σίγουρα να προσέξεις εδώ σήμερα ρίχνω κάτω. Και θα πετάς κάτω. Έλα, για όνομα του Θεού. Ποιος θέλει.
Κάτσε, κάποια κολλήσε κάτω από τα blocks.
Έλα, το πει κάτω,
Καλά βγήκε.
Πάρε και εσύ σε μια μεριά. Έλα, για όνομα του Θεού.
Δε.
Μην το πιάνεις όλη την ώρα. Αυτά καλά.
Κόκκινο. Είμαι μόνη μου εγώ. Κάτσε, πρέπει να μείνω. Αύριο, sorry παιδιά. Α, και οι δύο πέφτουν. Και οι δύο... Ο Τλίμος. Όχι. Πέφανε. Είναι 1v1. Κάτσε αυτή. Εκείνη μόλις νίκησε το όπι, παιδιά. Να τι. Μαύρο. Ωραία. Τώρα απλά θα φύγω. Παιδιά, δεν έχω κάνει ακόμα φίλους. Για να παίξουμε. Tower but the floor is lava. Παίξουμε αυτό.
House we see right here is very different from when we first saw the village. It looked like all the wood was burned down. You can also see more houses like this in the background comparing it to when we first saw the village. It seems that the entire
Να τώρα το μισό αυτόν. Σταμάτα. Σταμάτα να μιλάς και απλά. Più se ne sto sopra sopra.
Had what was done by a player. Our players used to have a certain skill that hadn't been used, so it couldn't have been him, which leads us to Matthew. Matthew is the one who thought he first village guys, and practically why? Well, we need to add on to it.
Nah. Devi na pausa de repente lava. Olha para o mundo projeto. Je te vindt een even kapot te lava. Onato. Ora per sta materia canena. Non li spirito che studiare.
Second time this happened, but I pointed it out in the second episode. Why do things keep disappearing, and why is it at every occurrence where something has disappeared is related to Matthew?
Ai che tu, ti sei venuto. A profe poco di sorella subirà.
When Matthew builds a house, it disappears. A player comes it off with something. Is it something new causing all of this? Why is it only happening to Matthew? Buckle up, because this is where things get started. If you enjoy the video,
Tu sono caso tu. Perché poi sono caso tutto per ma non si può fare. Vabbè. Perché te polico da figo. Ja sam se to vidi, bi vi prebila izvela na paro veliko ko.
Take a look at both perspectives, judging from where Matthew is standing. We should technically see him somewhere around here from our player's POV, but for some reason he's not there. We walk into the house and somehow Matthew is inside. Our player starts putting up trapdoors on the glass and placing more fences.
Nabuti.
He then writes
To vyhrál jako zitria, jak to? Αυτό ακριβώς εγώ κάνει copy. Αυτό εδώ. Ξέρετε πώς το είδα? Αυτό. Είναι 14, ναι. Και αυτό έγινε πριν.
First, let's go over the conversation our player and Matthew seem to have. Our player gets upset that Matthew doesn't listen to what he told him to do. We can even see this in episode 4.
Ας παίξουμε αυτό το παιχνίδι.
Got upset when he didn't complete it. That's all they wanted. Nothing. I do the tiniest something and they hate for a dark old root. It seems our player could be hinting towards an argument over the house we saw in the early episodes. Matthew responds to say
Rozumiem, co έγινε.
Something might have happened beforehand. He adds on to this saying he pushed them away and made
Whoa.
I do the tiniest something isn't nothing. It's fear. Fear of what exactly? It couldn't have been fear of moving. He says he started separating himself before he even found out he was moving. Given our player's lack of response, we can tell what Matthew says has a lot of truth to it. Our player is scared of his past, which can explain why in the
What's the problem that we subscribe?
like he didn't just play with his old friends on the Minecraft server that they used to play on because he left on bad terms. What happened in our player's past that he refuses to share? A more important question, who is Matthew? Oh, well, Matthew is our player's friend, right? But is he really? There's lots of times where he just straight up ignores his messages and only talks about himself. Is he a real life friend? A
Relator,
such little information on who Matthew is, he still points out our player's lies, and he knew our player pushed his friends away. This information will make sense later in the video. We also need to bring up what I pointed out in the he's no longer there, he just vanishes. Do you see where I'm going with this? At 3 minutes and 42 seconds, Matthew is blocking the doorway. Out of frustration, our player goes to punch him out the way, and Matthew doesn't move. He definitely hit Matthew because we can hear the sound of hitting. Not to mention, immediately after, he just walks through him with no entity collision. All of this evidence seems to keep tracing back to the same thing. Is there an entity in their game? Are they being haunted? Or could it be that Matthew isn't real? We get introduced to a new character named Donnie Darko. He introduces his new friend to his world, but out of the blue, he writes to Donnie, "This village we found was burning down. Right from a lava lake? No, there wasn't any there. Something's burning things down. What? It's going around lighting up shadows with flames." A very weird conversation, but then the video cuts to our player at this new base we've never seen before. Maybe they're playing in a new world. It gives Donnie fear and some time passes before our player receives a message from Matthew. Then Donnie writes, "Okay, I'll be back in a bit. I have to clean the cat." Then Matthew writes again, with our player responding no and entering his base, staring at Donnie before the video cuts. If you think we'd move on to the next episode, you would be wrong, because now we get a second POV. Now Matthew also recorded a video to his mom. Check it out. Joining a friend's Minecraft server, uploaded by Donnie's 123, the video showcases the same thing we saw in episode 6, except there's something different. There was a part in episode 6 that I wanted to leave out for this moment. I'll play you 2 clips at different POVs, and I want you to notice what's off about it. In our player's POV, we can see Matthew, but he resembles a ghost. And for some reason, in Donnie's POV, we can't see him. How is this even possible? This seems to go back to my theory on Matthew not being real. This theory would answer why people can't see him. It explains why everything that has disappeared in all the episodes were caused by Matthew. His fences and house disappeared because it was made by a person who isn't real. If we look closely, we can see the dirt path Matthew created disappeared. It wasn't just his house, it was everything he altered. The blocks he dropped disappeared because he doesn't exist. It's not possible for him to collect materials. That's how he vanished from the trees last episode. He's not a real person. But if that's the case, why is it that our player is the only one who sees Matthew? And if it's confirmed that Matthew never existed, then that would mean this entire time, every episode we watched, our player talked to no one. He has been by himself this entire time. But that still leaves another question. Why is Matthew here? Why does Matthew exist to our players? There has to be a reason. With us entering into the last few episodes of the series, we'll finally be able to understand everything. The video starts with the player and Matthew underground. They seem to have made a tunnel and be spying on Donnie. Again, Matthew is still transparent. They wait for Donnie to leave before digging into his face. They check out any changes to his face before Donnie comes back. Hey, what are you doing? After talking a bit, a player drops some gear to Matthew, with Matthew obviously not picking it up. The next scene is them in a cave. A player keeps laying doors, but never picking them up. Strange detail, but insignificant nonetheless. They then start talking to him. Our player falters. I don't know. You know, like when you wake up. Like when you open your eyes and you're in between 2 worlds. Yeah. I've got a notebook to write down what happened. Then our player looks at Matthew and reminding something happened.
Вы выползите, когда?
And I just can't wake up. If we go to the Donnie channel, we can see a second video has been posted. Who is he? And the video shows the same thing we watched in episode 8, except in Donnie's POV, just days to no here. When our players drop the items to Matthew, from Donnie's perspective, they look like items that were dropped for him, so he picks them up. Reminder, Donnie can't see Matthew because Matthew only exists in our player. You can also see Donnie get confused while our player keeps mining those without picking them up. And he gets really confused while our player turns to stare at nothing.
No.
But from our player's POV, they were staring at God, but the video doesn't end after our player is blown up. In fact, right before he's blown up, the video cuts and all of our player's loot is gone. We can tell Donnie didn't pick anything up looking at his inventory, but the video continues from where we ended in episode 8. Again, they knew what to say and you don't listen. No.
I always listen to what's up.
It's obvious our player is having a conversation with Matthew, but Donnie doesn't realize that because only our player can see the messages. Moving forward, the video cuts to Donnie reading the code on our player's actual face, showcasing this is all taking place in the same world. In the house, our armor stands, but we also see our player's name. Donnie digs down to him, and the rest is what takes place.
I woke up.
And here's what's up.
Our player freezes before writing.
Do you ever wish you could turn back time?
Do you know what happened is?
No.
Neither do I. We should build one.
There's a lot of things to look over in this video, so I'll try to cover them all. Our player is spying on Donnie. We know this because we can see behind him a long dugout tunnel he made. If we really understand the context of what's happening right now, things get really disturbing. Why is our player spying on Donnie, but we're never given an answer? Our player seems to still believe of Matthew's existence, constantly looking at him and dropping gear for him. There's also something I'd like to point out, which includes two scenes. The first one being our player staring at our player when Donnie writes a certain message in chat, and then our player respawning in a black box. Donnie mentions his notebook being something he uses to write down his thoughts and dreams, and ironically our player looks at Matthew right after. This scene could have more beneath the surface. Maybe this moment could be ironic because that's what Matthew is to our player. Notebook he uses to write his thoughts and feelings to, which could explain why we only see conversations about our player's feelings, and could also explain what is going on when our player respawns. We see the same black box in an earlier episode, but we were left unanswered. But this black box might symbolize our player's thoughts. What we're seeing right now is Simon's imagination, and I say this because the only other time we see our player is when Donnie finds him in his bunker, and his first words are, "I fucked up." The times we see our player in a black box could be our players dreaming, and all of it being in their head. So that means Matthew is all a part of our player's head, an imagination he created to talk about his feelings. And if you still don't believe my theory, that's fine, because we still have one last video to watch. The video starts with our player staring at his crotch. He continues doing this for another 3 minutes before typing out a message.
Do you ever wish you could have seen the future?
But instead of entering the message, he deletes it instead. He finally moves out of his spot to see Donnie building a treehouse. He asks him if he has any dark code, to which Donnie says no, so he checks inside the house for some, but he goes down to his bunker and there he sees Matthew standing in a tunnel and stare at each other before a player places down a sign with the following message.
Dear friend, I think you better this time. Goodbye.
He turns around and Matthew is gone. Our player drops all of his armor on the floor from where Matthew is standing, and he heads out his base and glances to his right before noticing something on the ground. An iron leggings and chest plate, an iron axe, and a pickaxe. These 4 items also happen to be the same items our player dropped to Matthew in episode 2. Not only that, but our player picks them up in the exact same spot he dropped the items in. But moving forward, our player checks out the treehouse and offers Donnie some help to build the treehouse before the video ends. This video showcases Matthew leaving for good. When our player turns like we've seen before, because right after it followed up with items on the ground that matched with the items our player dropped to Matthew, and it makes sense why. Matthew is not real, and if this theory is true, then in episode 2, how would it be possible for Matthew to pick up items our player dropped for him? That was a question that made me doubt this theory for a while, but we finally understand that Matthew never picked up those items and had been lying there on the ground this entire time. We notice a change in Matthew once we
Love you, stupid.
on these first 5 episodes. Matthew is fully visible and he's always acting interacted with whatever our player had going on. But once Donnie joined, Matthew became transparent, almost like he was slowly fading away. When our player went to place that sign,
Δεν ήξερε μάλλον ότι εγώ μιλάω.
was gone for good. But why does he leave? Because of Donnie. In our player's first episode, he complained about missing his old friends and how he had trouble with making friends in school. But after meeting Donnie, our player finally showed signs of happiness in himself. That's why before Donnie was introduced, Matthew would always talk to our player with intentions of making him feel better. Because Matthew was just someone our player created to comfort him during these times. Also, Matthew's name, Find_Nula. We know what the word find means, but what does Nula mean? And a few weeks ago, that's when I searched it up and found this. From the Latin word nulla, meaning none, nothing, or the number 0. It was hinted in Matthew's name. It was just under our nose the entire time. But in the end, Alex finally got his happy ending. But then I also remember that since Matthew isn't real, everything he doesn't actually happen. Yet somehow in episode nothing, we get a POV of Matthew. But if Matthew isn't real, how does this footage even exist? This minor clip brings in a lot more questions and puts a big stop to everything I theorize. But unfortunately, there's just some things I can't answer. But hey, what's a good mystery? Without an unanswered question. That's a tasty salami, arthritis and crew. Yeah, it's spicy food. It is vegan. You must say ahora. Second speech. In the phenomenon.
Posto vediamo, fare like, subscribe, anche perché non puoi
Dobra. Παιδιά, αυτό είναι το βίντεο μου. Οπότε 2. Θα σας δώσω το επόμενο βίντεο 2.
You create your new world.